A long time ago in, I don't know, 2006 or something, there was a young boy who stayed up into the dead of night watching the television. It was a glorious sight to the child, a chance to experience obscenities, toilet humor, and surprisingly witty political commentary that would impact his life like nothing before. I grew up with South Park. I remember staying up until 9 PM, which had recently been my bedtime, just to catch an episode. Because I watched the show from a really young age, not only did it completely destroy any social skills I may have had, but it also won a permanent spot in my heart. Now, as you may have noticed, this review is substantially late. The game came out on the 4th in America, so I'm a tad bit behind, but there are reasons for that. So before I get into the game, I need to talk about the game's pre-release and how it absolutely fucked me. First off, this game was given out to an ungodly amount of people before its release, and it was actually kind of heartbreaking seeing videos of the game well over a week before it came out in America. Now, the main issue is that I didn't get the game when the Americans did. I got the game a whole 3 days later, on the 7th. I got the game on Steam. What the hell is with this archaic business model? Why is it that I can't get a digital game the same time as everyone else? I mean, add on to this the full-priced release, £40, and the pre-order exclusive outfits, and I think you can see why this game left a bad taste in my mouth before I even started playing it. It was a South Park RPG. This wasn't some tacky FPS game, or a shitty racing game that didn't fit in with the South Park universe. This genre was playing the South Park's strengths. I had to play it, and I'm glad I did. The comparison that a lot of people are making is that the game's very similar to Paper Mario. Now, I've never played Paper Mario, but because this is being said so much, I felt like it was worth repeating. Now, even though it's turn-based, the game's combat is extremely engaging, at least for an RPG. All your attacks require some sort of additional input for them to be effective, and some won't work at all if you fail the quick time events, the most notable example being all of Kenny's skills. Now, I get that quick time is like a cursed word in the gaming industry right now, but they actually work pretty well to add another layer of depth to the combat. It makes the game at least a little bit skill-based. That said, the game's really absurdly easy. I've only actually had like 1 or 2 fights in the game force a game over, and only 1 fight that I'd really call difficult. You can turn up the difficulty at any time though, so I suppose that's a plus, but I found that I could win almost every fight in the game by either AoEing all the enemies down, or just by stacking bleeds and burns on the enemy. Bleeds, burns, and other debuffs like Gross Out are very entertaining to watch though. Honestly, I think there's enough diversity in the combat. You only get 4 abilities for your class, but you also get both a melee and ranged attack that change depending on the weapon you're using, 4 magic spells, several summons, and a choice of 6 different companions that possess their own set of skills, as well as a special ability. That said, I use Butters throughout the entire game, so I suppose it's completely subjective as to whether or not this is enough combat diversity. There is, however, a huge number of outfits in the game which affect your character's appearance and abilities in some way, as well as numerous cosmetics. If you want to look like Heisenberg or the fairy tale princess, the game's got it. There's also an ungodly amount of junk loot to find, not all of them being a reference to some sort of item from the South Park universe. The issue here is that it takes absolutely forever to sell it all. But aside from combat, gameplay-wise, there are puzzles to be found in the world. The puzzles aren't all that difficult, so they don't really get in the way of the rest of the game, and they even have a certain charm to them. The controls don't really work all that well on PC. You get 4 world-based puzzle-solving abilities, but instead of binding them all to separate keys, like you would with a keyboard, you have to tab through them all to find the one you want. This becomes time-consuming and tedious, especially if you accidentally pass by the one you need. Now, this wouldn't be an issue if you could rebind your keys, but you can't. Oh, and not only can you not rebind your keys, but you can't do much of anything options-wise. On top of that, the game's locked to 30 frames per second. On PC. Now, that said, the game is an RPG, and uses the South Park aesthetic, so by no means does it make the game unplayable, but this and the clunky ability tabbing to me makes the game just feel like a PC port as opposed to a game built for PC. Oh, and at some point the game decided that it really didn't like fraps and became a slideshow. Whenever I wasn't recording, the game ran just fine though. The character progression, besides finding new weapons or costumes, revolves around 2 figures. Your level, which caps at 15, and that lets you put points into your skills that makes them more powerful and dynamic in combat. And then there's your friends. Every time you achieve a predetermined number of friends, you get to choose a perk, which strongly impacts the direction your character goes and what skills or abilities they'll be using. Now before I continue, I want to make one thing clear. I breezed through the whole game in one sitting. I completed the main storyline and near every side quest I found in the game in just over 10 hours. I came back to the game and finished up every side quest I could find within another 2 hours. This game is short enough that it's actually kind of cruel, because every minute I played I loved. The game absolutely, perfectly carries the feeling that it's a South Park game in every instance. The gameplay and the abilities are brutal and hilarious, the dialogue is perfect, and the story just shouts South Park. It's exactly what I wanted from a South Park game. Every minute detail, even how the characters run, is perfectly emulated, and every character you want to see in the game is here. So it was painful to me that after 10 or so hours of play, there was nothing I could do in this incredibly crafted world. I mean, every time you walk into a store, a song like Gay Fish or Vote or Die plays. Every second, the game's throwing at you some kind of joke or reference. It's what the South Park fans, or at least I, have been waiting for years. So why couldn't it last forever? I suppose there is some replayability in the game, though. There are 4 different classes that you can play, and some in-game choices that make minor changes to the story, but it would be like rewatching an episode of South Park. It's still a great episode, but that initial magic is lost. South Park's the kind of game I wish I could play for the first time again and again. But what if you've never seen South Park? Well, the game still holds up as a really solid RPG. The combat and progression are enough to keep you going for the 10 hours of play. The world is fun to explore with secrets hidden everywhere, and there's a surprising amount of enemy diversity. Some of which are hilarious, like the dire wolves and the dire bears and the sort of vice president. Now, if you think you have a good sense of humor and aren't easily horrified or offended, then I think you should definitely give the game a chance. At a lower price. The game's too short and too expensive for me to recommend it to anyone that isn't already into South Park. But if the game ever becomes cheaper or goes on sale, then I would definitely suggest giving it a look. It's a hilarious, engaging 10-hour experience. But if you are into South Park and haven't picked up this game yet, it's a must-buy. Maybe not right now, wait for a sale or for the price to drop, but I cannot put into words how incredible the 10 hours I got out of this game were. Oh, and if you don't like South Park, you won't like this game. Go figure. The game's available on PC, PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 for £40 or your regional equivalent. The game's Steam page will be in the video description below. This was Bates, thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.
Well, you've been terrific.
In West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playground is where I spend most of my days. Chilling all night and relaxing all cool, then shooting some b-ball outside the school with a couple of guys who were up to no good. Son, making trouble in my neighborhood.